We are with the second topic. Here, I am going to talk about definitions of money supply first. You heard about a variable M in that first macro course, but it is not very clearly defined what M is and how M changes. So, I am going to go into the details of this M. M changes when you go to another country. Now, in any country, one thing is very common across all countries is that whatever be the definition of M, which is money supply, they all have a base, which is called the monetary base or reserve money. They all have a base called reserve money or monetary base or high powered money, whatever it is called. In the previous class, I gave you the description of monetary base, how it is defined. It has three components. One, currency in circulation, which has two parts, currency with the public, and I define public, plus cash with banks, whatever cash lies. Then you have bankers' deposits with the central bank. In our case, it is the RBI. Why do banks deposit cash? There are a number of reasons. One, the most important reason is we have in India something called CRR, cash reserve ratio. So, when banks at the end of a week says this is the amount of deposit money that has come through various savings account, fixed deposit account, etc., the central bank tells the bank that now count that and leave a percentage of that cash with us. This is called cash reserve ratio. In case your bank mismanages funds because they give out loans, and suppose they create too much of bad loans, and how do they create loans? They create loans out of this deposit money. Government does not give money to create loans. So, banks use the deposit money, your money, my money, to give out loans to somebody else. So, suppose they are bad loans and the money is not returned, then your money and my money is stuck with the bank. I do not get it. So, in order to avoid what is called a bank failure, central banks created this norm after the Great Depression that there will be a CRR. All banks have to listen to that. Commercial banks I am talking about. They are called commercial banks, these banks where you open accounts. There are various kinds of banks. There are commercial banks, there are cooperative banks, there are non-banks. So, I am going to talk about, I am talking about commercial banks. So, that is one. Second, banks do keep cash with the central bank, because central bank in India like RBI operates a centralized clearing facility. So, I have an account in this bank, but I receive check from bank B, but I deposit in my bank A, and then bank A has to send the check back to bank B for endorsement. The money need to come from there, all sorts of complications. So, centralized clearing facility, like one person sitting there with a giant board with all the bank's accounts. So, it just keeps on debiting and crediting the amounts. His account ke bhaga ke udhar, and whose account, these are various kinds of things they do. Finally, other deposits. This is not very clear in the literature. Other deposits with the RBI is a very small number I have seen, less than 1%. So, if you plot them, it does not come. They are down on the x-axis, the numbers. Even the absolute numbers, not the percentage, absolute numbers are down there. They do not come properly, but I have to mention them. These other deposits, what I have gathered, are the deposits of various kinds of demand and time deposits that Reserve Bank holds of accounts. Reserve Bank operating as a commercial bank for somebody. Who are the somebody? Reserve Bank does not operate as a commercial bank, the central bank for us. We cannot go and open an account in central bank in our country. We go to a commercial bank. There may be governments of other countries, our government, and the international organizations like IMF, World Bank, other central banks keeping money. There can be all sorts of things, but that's a very small amount in India. All right. Now, having said that, the connection between this base money and the monetary aggregates, which is the definitions of money, will come a little bit later, but let me define the other money. There are traditionally in India 4 types of monetary aggregates, 4 traditional monetary aggregates, 4 traditional monetary aggregates. Why are they aggregates? Because it's a sum total of items. 4 traditional monetary aggregates. One is famous, called M1. M1. M1 has another name also. It's called narrow money. That means its definition is narrow. Narrow in the sense there are only a few items in M1. What are the items? There are 3 items again. Currency with the public, so it's not currency in circulation, currency with the public, not currency in circulation, currency with the public, plus demand deposits with the banks, demand deposits with banks are, as I told you, there are 2 types of deposits, conceptually speaking, demand and time. The example of demand deposits is that I demand my money any time when I get it, which is our savings accounts. And there is another demand deposit account which is very popular with these commercial banks in India, called current account. And time deposit accounts are the fixed deposit accounts. They are of various durations, 3-year fixed deposit, 5-year fixed deposit and all that. There is another type of fixed deposit account that I have seen are called recurring deposits, where the money is held with the bank for a long period, but you do not put that entire money initially into the fixed deposit. You keep on putting money every month, every year. It recurs and it piles up, accumulates, continuous kind of an investment. And finally, after 5 years or 4 years, you get the principal back with interest, recurring deposits. So, demand deposits with banks. Last item are the deposits with banks. Why? Because these are like the demand deposit and time deposits of, probably these are only demand deposits of the RBI, holding accounts of various institutions. So, it has the other deposits. Again, the number does not show even in M1. It's such a small percentage. Even narrow money में वो number आते नहीं है picture में. I've seen other deposits. With RBI. Now, this is the narrow money. Nothing to be explained, public, etc. The words I have explained already to you. What I would do is, I will jump not M2 first, M1 के बाद M2 आना चाहिए, not M2, but I will go to the most important money in India. In US, it may be very different. There are various others. They have M1, M1A, M2, M2A, various aggregates they have, I have seen in literature, in journal articles, etc. But in our country, these are the ones. I will go into M3. I will skip M2. I will tell you what M2 is, very simple. I will go to M3. Now, this is the most important money in India. It's called the broad money, the definition which is mostly used. Broad money is equal to M1, whatever M1 has been, M1 plus time deposits with banks. Time deposits with banks. This is M3. This is the most important money in India, that is most popular. Now, this also is known as broad money. Another word is that money stock. Often this is, I have seen this is used, not often, I have seen this used, money stock. Achha. Now, I come to M2 and M3, M2 and M4, which is something which we do not use much. What M2 does is that it brings into the picture beside M1, the savings deposits, the demand deposits with post offices. So, it is M1 plus demand deposits with post offices. Post office has a bank called Post Office Savings Bank or something it's called. You can have a passbook, you can have a checkbook, you can deposit money, withdraw money. One of the oldest bank in some sense, because in rural India, if you go, there is often not a commercial bank branch. But when people do banking, they do with post offices. I have seen that many years. At IIT, this was all a village. And when I came to IIT, I had seen so many people having accounts there in post office here. So, this is demand deposits with Post Office Savings Bank, it is called Post Office Savings Bank or post offices. And the funny thing was, when I had an account and I started this kind of a course where this was a topic, financial system in India, one of the topics. And I went out collecting data, information, I went to the bank to know. I did not know much, because long time back as an undergraduate student, I may have learned something, who knows when. So, now I have been asked to develop a course, so I went to the bank, the post offices. Interesting thing was post office savings bank account interest rate was higher than the commercial bank interest rate. But people still go to commercial bank because the service quality is better probably. Savings interest rate was higher. It's very interesting. Achha. So, with post office savings bank M2. Now, M4 is nothing but M3 plus total deposits with post offices, with post office savings bank. They call savings bank anyway, they deal with a lot of savings of the country. They have also something called saving certificates which they sell. Post offices just don't do this, what you call that what is called philatelic counters. They have stamps and envelopes, no registrations and all that, Speed Post. They do a lot of financial transactions. They are the main agency of government saving certificates, post office, only agency in fact. National Saving Certificate, Kishan Bikash Patro, Indira Bikash Patro, National Saving Certificate number 8. They have developed over the years. They do deal with a lot of savings, small savings is called. Small savings, individuals have 100 rupees savings, 1000 rupees savings, 2000 rupees savings, can buy a savings certificate. Small savings for a long time. Post offices are an important source of revenue for the government. They deal with a lot of, just not the accounts, banks. The other part is that saving certificates and stuff they deal with. So, when you start earning, when you will become a salaried person, then you would learn more about these things, because they offer tax breaks. Government offer tax breaks to income earners. If you buy saving certificates, then you get a exemption from some amount of taxes, 20% or something, I don't know. Post office, so total deposits with, and I looked at the numbers, they don't change much. So, when I will show you numbers, I will have slides here. You would know how the variables are behaving over time, maybe 10-year period, 20-year period slides, some of them, some cases. What you will notice is that I don't have data on M2, M4. If you want the source, I can give you the source. They don't differ much. The post office amount compared to the bank amount is not very significant. So, the lines don't change much. But remember, this savings bank I am talking about, I am not talking about the saving certificates money here. Don't think Kishan Bikash Patro, NSC, etc. money is here. It's only the bank part, banking part. Of post office also has that other kind of savings activities. It's not there. Okay. So, broad money, narrow money, the definitions of M1, M2, M3. Good. Now, having said this, I have discovered that the late 90s, the reform started process, as you know from Indian economics course, around 91, 92. Late 90s, Reserve Bank under probably the chairmanship of the then governor, Dr. Y.V. Reddy, very active man he was, he is still active, Dr. Y.V. Reddy, they have a tradition of very interesting. They are like IITs in some sense. They have departments, Reserve Bank. Like we have Department of Mechanical Engineering, Department of Electrical Engineering, Department of Human Resources, Social Science. They have also Banking Department, Issue Department, vagara vagara hai sab. And also they have a convention of forming what is known as a working group. That is, eminent scholars they may invite to be part of it under the chairmanship of some big person, RBI people are there. They form working group to study a very specific issue which has come to light and is an important one. So, they do a research work, then they suggest recommendations. It is like various institutions in India has various ways and names associated with this kind of committees. In Parliament, I heard about something called standing committees. On TV, I hear. In RBI, they have something called working group. Now, there was a famous working group. It has come to be known as WGMS. And let me talk about that, what it did. RBI Working Group. A report, RBI report of the working group on money supply and colon, then it says analytics and methodology of compilation. Analytics and methodology of compilation. June 1998, there is a date, June, the report came out, 1998, late 90s, I was talking about the late 90s it came, June 1998. It went into, revisited the monetary aggregates that we use. Now, RBI has much more important duties than we have with respect to monetary aggregates. You know from the macro models, money supply is part of the demand function. So, often the demand function is controlled via money supply by the central bank to control prices, to improve the output of the economy. Monetary policies, which are known as monetary policies, is very rampant throughout the world. So, they have more business with monetary aggregates than we as scholars or academicians and students have to do. Just know the definition, but they actually have to check the numbers every time, like checking the pulse of the economy or pulse of a person who is not well, particularly when not well. How is the fever, how high is the fever, that kind of a thing. Now, this monetary policy issue that the central bank has in any country, and in India RBI has, led RBI to rethink about the definition of monetary aggregates. The traditional aggregates is very common, everybody knows. And the rethinking went along this line, this report says, and the chairman of this committee was Dr. Y.V. Reddy, ex-governor. I may still have a note, Y.V. Reddy's signature, you may have a note, because notes are not issued just after Y.V. Reddy left. Notes have been issuing since then, previous to that. Y.V. Reddy governor. पुराना नोट देखो, उनका signature मिलेगा. अच्छा, he was the governor signature रहते हैं नोट में. तो ये, they came up with three new monetary aggregates, and the reason is these aggregates they issued, the issue was one, residency, very important. Let me use a colored chalk. One of the issues they came up with in the new Indian economy after the reforms is that you have to distinguish between residency. Assam में problem चल रहा है residency लेकर. Who is a resident, who is a non-resident? बहुत बड़ा problem चल रहा है असम में. Now, this is monetary economics problem, residency. One of the issues that they were dealing with is residency. Is the money Indian or is the money a non-resident Indian's money, or a non-resident, it may be Indian, settled abroad, or a foreigner, white-skinned foreigner, or an African, or a Southeast Asian. Residency. This is one of the issues there, but the character is changing. So, they have to have new monetary aggregates. The traditional ones may not be good enough. And the non-residency component will be volatile also, which you know. It comes in, goes out, God knows when. The residency amount is within India, it remains. Not a lot of people leave India overnight. The money chala gaya bahar, ye hota nahi hai. But the non-resident component, if you study that, it will be quite volatile. They are coming through the stock market, they are coming through direct investment, they are coming through simple accounts. A student has gone abroad sending money home, they are settling there. Achha. Residency, that basically talks about the non-resident repatriable. Repatriable means which can be transferred between countries. I can repatriate money from India to England anytime. Non-resident repatriable foreign currency deposits, which are there. If you go to State Bank, you will see there are special accounts for non-resident Indians, which are not meant for India. Account names are like FCNR, foreign currency, non-resident Indian accounts. They carry a different interest rate. Often the money is there held in foreign currency, not Indian rupee either. They give the option, how would you like to open the account, sir? Will it be in dollar account, pound account, or Indian rupee account? Various interesting things have happened with the banks. So, the money character, monetary aggregate characters are changing. It's just not Indians money there in banks. The foreign money there, and foreign banks are also here. Okay. So, things like that, and then the India government, certain bonds where the transactions were in foreign currency, etc., were also there. And the second issue they were dealing with is very interesting. One is the residency issue, they found is an important issue now in the Indian economy. Second one they were dealing with is a distinction between very long term and relatively shorter term time deposits. Very long term and relatively short term time deposits. Very long term and relatively short term time deposits. Time deposits are long term, at least 1 year. Long term is, if you define it, at least 1 year. Now, there are some time deposits which are 1 year old, 2 year old, and there are time deposits which are 10 year, 15 year. Let us take the case of Provident Fund. I start working here, I am now 24 years nearly completed at IIT. I have been depositing money in the Contributory Provident Fund. If I had an account in the bank, or this Contributory Provident Fund is kept by the government with this bank, suppose, in fixed deposit accounts or something. This money is not going to be withdrawn even after 5 years, which is the normal length of a maximum fixed deposit. So, there are some fixed deposits which are short duration fixed deposits, time deposits, like shorter in relative terms, and also therefore, there are in relative terms there are fixed deposits which are very long term. So, they are trying to make the distinction. Okay. Having done that, they came up with 3 new monetary aggregates. Three new monetary aggregates, and let me see if they, if I can define them. One is called now NM1, which contains currency with the public, which is within India, whoever holds it, currency with public, plus demand deposits of residents with banks. This is very interesting. Demand deposits of residents with banks, not the non-resident money. That's why they are segregated accounts also, and this is done with RBI's permission and instruction also. Sometimes RBI instructs, sometimes if you want to do something, you take a permission from RBI, because that's the central regulatory authority of all banks. In fact, non-banks are also coming under RBI these days. Non-banks are also coming under RBI. And then plus other deposits. Other deposits are other deposits with RBI. Now, I looked at the number NM1 and M1, how much of a difference? Statistically not significant. So, I won't show you the data, hardly any difference. But if you want to know, I will give you a link and you can open RBI bulletin and it's right in front of you every year. My year data is there, M1, you can check the NM1 data. Then they came up with NM2, another one, NM2. And you wonder, sir, NM2 should be similar to that post office part should come in, but post office mein non-resident Indian kaun rupiya rakh? Not interested. So, NM2 will be very different from M2. NM2 is NM1 plus short term time deposits of residents with banks, short term time deposits TD of residents. This is very interesting, with banks, plus, no, not plus, that's it, including and up to the contractual maturity of 1 year, bracket, including and up to a contractual maturity of 1 year. इतना छोटा छोटा टाइम डिपॉजिट भी है, सुना नहीं कभी मैंने, very short term. Then comes NM3, and you would think, sir, NM3 should be or parallel to M3, the broad money. Let's see what NM3 was. NM3 is NM2 plus long-term time deposits of residents with banks, long-term time deposits of residents with banks, plus, which I don't understand, call / term funding from financial institutions. Now, slowly you will see I am losing out on certain definitions. When you say financial institutions and don't specify banks, it can also be non-banks. So, IDBI, ICICI, state financial corporations, state industrial development bank, CDB, सब आ जाते हैं इधर. And they are talking about call, which I don't understand, because call money I would explain in the next topic, topic 3, is a very short term money. Call money is used by banks when they are in need of cash for 24 hours, 2 weeks, something like that, they are short of cash. They can go to the call market and borrow money. all right. They can go to the market and borrow money from another bank or whatever, non-bank, whatever. I will talk about call money. This is what I didn't understand, why a very short term thing is there, and it writes call / term funding. Term means long term funding, loans that banks and non-banks give out. This is very interesting, a little bit confusing for me, because it was going into very short term maturity of time deposits, long term maturity of time deposits. Now suddenly an item call is also there, call / term funding from financial institutions. For whatever reason, RBI thought this is something which is important for them for various policy issues they are concerned with. So the straightforward M1, M2, M3, M4 were not sufficient. So they had to go into these new monetary definitions, NM1 and NM2. NM3 number is quite different than M3. I've seen that. If I find time, I will collect some data for 10-year period or something and send them to you. NM3 is different from M3. They are. NM1 and M1 they are not. NM2 is not much of a difference. NM3 थोड़ा अलग number है. Because you're talking about the bank finance also now. The money they give out, funding. All right. Now, I'm not going to go into the details because I got into trouble whenever I went into. This committee also came up, which they did not call monetary aggregates, but they came up with some variable which they called liquidity aggregates. And when they came up with the liquidity aggregates, another set of 3 liquidity aggregates, L1, L2, L3, I'm not going to go into the details of this. When they came up with these liquidity aggregates, what I found is that the post office came into the picture, non-banks came into the pictures, something called certificates of deposit which came into the picture. So they have reasons which is not very clear to me. I didn't read the report why these items were included. I did not complicate the picture here. So far it has been straightforward, easy to understand and learn. Liquidity aggregates, I am not going to get into the picture. You may not come across many very important things in life right now where you would be required to use liquidity aggregates in your study or whatever. That's much more complex. They didn't call that monetary aggregates, they call that liquidity aggregates. And they have various money market things included there. And I will teach you about those money market things. That's my responsibility. But I don't want to bring the liquidity aggregate because most of the things you haven't heard, you don't know, and you would just stare at the definitions. The monetary aggregate definitions are at least intuitive. You know fixed deposits, you know savings accounts, and things like that, currency is easy to understand. But liquidity aggregates items are very complex. And they're related to money market, which is in topic 3. So after topic 3, if you feel like, then I can try to give you a definition of liquidity aggregates. All right? Any question? Any question? I'm going through a very important part of the course. Now, I will start developing a concept which is introduced in macroeconomics. And this concept in macroeconomics comes up particularly in the context of the classical macro model, where you have the quantity theory equation, which you write MV is equal to PT or something, PY, quantity theory equation. And you come across a term called V. MV is equal to PY. M is some definition of money supply, maybe M1 or M3 or something. V is called velocity of money, is equal to PY. P is price, average price in India, say, and Y is the total output. So what you say is that the money supply into velocity of money is equal to nominal income. This is what you say in quantity theory. And this velocity is a concept which is classical, not Keynesian. All right. But the development of that concept is very interesting. It started at two continents separately, but more or less at the same time. Very interesting. The velocity developed because of some reasons in North America, in US, and the concept of velocity was also developing in England around the same time, beginning of the 20th century. In the classical, this is part of classical macroeconomics. So what I would do, I would have something here, although you heard of velocity of money, I would have something here which will now take you back to your classical macroeconomic theory that you have learned. I need that for some reason. So I will have a section now, a discussion on velocity of money. So I would talk about velocity of money. So let me talk about the quantity theory of money, which is part of the classical model. Quantity theory of money was developed, this velocity notion, by one particular economist who also had that nominal interest rate and real interest rate definition given, famous, Irving Fisher. And the quantity theory of money essentially said MV is equal to PY. M is some definition of a monetary aggregate, say M1, M3. V is called velocity of money, PY. P is price, say CPI, GDP deflator, wholesale price index value or whatever, and Y is output, real GDP or something like that. Now, Irving Fisher, the book name is, you may not get the book in the library here, The Purchasing Power of Money, 1911. You are wondering, sir, पागल है 1911 का बात कर रहे हैं अभी 2012 हो गया अभी इधर 100 साल के ऊपर, लेकिन it's important because it's still relevant. This is the problem. Certain things are still relevant. In the context of the quantity theory of money, an algebraic expression of the concept can be derived from the Fisher's equation of exchange. What Fisher was interested was not in velocity of money. What Fisher was interested is very different. Fisher was interested that what is the link, connection between money, what we see US dollar, and the total amount that the economy spends on goods and services, if I equate that with total income, roughly. If I consider saving somewhere, going into banks and going out as bank expenses or something, into firms, investment. So the total income basically, that is the total expenditure on goods, some ways. Some are consumer goods and some are capital goods where firms, our savings go to the banks and banks give them out as loans to firms. Firms take them out and spend on some other good called capital goods or investment goods, machines, etc. Factory बना रहा है, हम लोग जाके रेव में मस्ती करते हैं. अच्छा, दोनों अलग goods है, लेकिन the total is kind of the same. Total income is the total spending. What's the link he was looking for? Because he can see whatever data he has, that the money is a small component of the total spending in the country in any year. आप क्या सोचते हैं? Money है तो spend कर रहा हूँ. My money is equal to my spending maximum. जो मेरे पास है वही तो maximum मैं spend कर सकता हूँ. You can go into borrowing. Forget about borrowing now. I borrow from you, I borrow from her or whatever. He was deeply interested in, this is the origin of economics in some sense. These are the stalwarts. Basic fundamental question he was asking. Now it is everybody we know this. There was no concept of velocity. So he was looking into Py and M and he can see that M is less than Py. कैसे हो रहा है? एक देश में M is less than Py, the total money they are spending. How is it? भगवान आके कुछ कर देते रात में. Then he landed upon this concept of velocity. He says money, if you take the cash, it just doesn't used only once. I buy goods and give it to you, to your canteen manager. Suppose I go and have a cup of tea after class today and I give it to your canteen manager. उधर वो खत्म नहीं हो जाता है. Canteen manager doesn't go and burn it. Canteen manager in the evening takes it to the sabji wala, buys sabji for his wife, otherwise his wife would not allow him to enter house probably. So he is under compulsion to go to the sabji wala, buy the sabji, and he takes out the same 20 note which I gave him in the afternoon. So, a currency travels, and this is what came to be known as velocity. And you can calculate average velocity simply by taking the total GNP value or GDP value at current prices and the total money supply from RBI side, and you divide one by the other, you know what the velocity number is, average velocity in India. This is how he landed upon the concept of velocity, first time, Irving Fisher, 1911 book. And this equation in Irving Fisher was not known as quantity theory of money. This is a coined term later. This is his equation of exchange, he called. You can write it down. This one he called equation of exchange. What is the equation which determines the exchange of goods and service in the country and its relationship to money supply? And he landed up with the concept of V. And what he found is that, very simple thing, he found that V is equal to Py over M greater than 1. And I hope you know MV, what it is called, money supply into velocity. Money supply is M, but MV kya kehte hai? MV is called total effective supply of money. Money supply is M and total effective supply of money is MV. Okay? Clear? Okay. So, he got a relationship called total effective supply of money is equal to total nominal income, not money supply is equal to total nominal income. And this came to be known as quantity theory, became a cornerstone of the classical model, which I need not talk about in this course because this is not a macro theory course. Now, I need more discussion on V. I do not stop. He did not stop here, he discovered V, then he went on telling how V would change and behave in an economy. Fantastic stuff. This is, I am going beyond your macro theory now. You heard of V. He also elaborated on why V would change and how V would change in any country. V is not permanently a fixed number. It changes. On a yearly basis or something, it is a fixed number, you can say, but it does change. So, that will be my next part of the discussion.